Be seated,
No, be
please.
seated. All righty. I'm going to step out for a moment while they get the jurors in. Y'all can go ahead and bring the jurors. I love something.
Okay. Let's all rise for the jury, please. Watch those swinging chairs right there. Go. Come all over. Watch those swinging chairs. Watch those swinging chairs in the back. Be seated, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's good to see you again. It's been a while, I know. Good for us, not for you, but regardless. Yeah, it's always good to tell the truth, isn't it? But regardless, we're in this together, and it is good to see you again. Well, thank you for being prompt and courteous this morning. I think it might be good for us to introduce ourselves to you again. I'm Mary Staley Clark. I'm the judge who's from Cobb County, who's been assigned to preside over the trial of the state of Georgia versus Justin Ross Harris. I read to you the bill of indictment, and we are in the process of jury selection and ready to begin questioning of you all. And I would like for first the state and then the defense to introduce themselves again.
Good morning. Again, Chuck Boring with the Cobb County District Attorney's Office.
Good morning. Jesse Evans, also with the Cobb County District Attorney's Office.
And Susan Treadaway, also with Cobb County DA's office.
Who called the defense?
Hey, good morning. I'm Maddox. This is Brian Lumpkin. Morning. And Carlos Rodriguez. Good morning. And of course, we represent Ross. Good morning.
We're going to go into more questioning. The parties are going to question you. Now, they can ask you about personal experiences you or people that you know may have had, or things that you may be aware of, just generally, sort of experiences or opinions or thoughts related to this particular case. And they can ask you about work and family background, possible emotional reaction to the subject matter of the case, things of that nature, things that relate to you as an individual and to this case, and your ability to serve on this case in a fair and impartial manner. That's the way the question will be. It's very broad in range, but it focuses again on you as an individual and your ability to serve on this case in a fair and impartial manner. You're under oath, so you are obligated to be as truthful and candid as possible. It's better to give too much information than not enough. Human communication is an interesting thing, and it may be that I'm speaking to you and I just think I'm as clear as all get out, and you're looking at me and thinking, what does all get out mean? Or something along that. So if we use expressions, words, we're lawyers, we very often can lapse into legal talk. It's important that you feel comfortable enough, and I want you to say, what do you mean by that? That's just a perfectly fine question. What do you mean by that? What are you looking for? What information do you want? I've never heard that word before. What does it mean? And, all I have to do is read the newspaper today, and I'm going to find at least 10 words I've never heard before. So that's very common. Also, speaking as to your oath, you have to answer truthfully every question we ask you. Having said that, it may be that some of the questions come up that you consider to be personal or private. This is what you need to do. You need to, if it's a hand-raising situation or a one-on-one situation, you need to say, yes, I have an answer to that, but I consider it to be personal. And we will create as private an environment as possible for you to be able to answer that. So I want to arm you with that so you'll feel comfortable to know that if we get into areas that you think, no, that's a little bit personal to me, well, you say that. That's a little bit personal to me. And then we'll move as carefully as we can to be as respectful of that as we can. And finally, I'm going to turn it over to first the state and then the defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's been a few days. So, just so y'all know how this is going to go from the state standpoint, and then I guess a little bit procedurally. You guys were in here a few days ago. We talked about some things general in nature. I got you to all raise your hand, things like that. So we're going to follow up on some of those questions I asked and get a little more detail. I know some of you may have had questions like, does this apply to me or not? We'll get to kind of flesh that out now. Also, after I ask you individual questions, the defense will get up here and ask you individual questions as well. There were a couple of issues that you raised your hand for the other day that we're actually going to take up in private. So some of you will end up taking these issues up in private anyway. But generally what we're going to be talking about now, I'm going to start off asking you all some questions about your employment, your background, things like that, and then talk about some of your answers, okay? So obviously we're going to start with you, Juror 25. How are you this morning? Fine. Okay, so you work over at Sea Island. How long have you worked over there?
17 years.
Okay, and you are semi-retired, I think you said. What type of work did you do before you were working on Sea Island?
Same thing.
Same thing, just a different area?
Yeah.
Okay, and have you always worked in that type of profession, that job? Okay, all right. All right, and you live in the downtown area, correct? Now, you stated, like, getting into those questions about people you know, things like that. I believe you stated that you knew somebody in the court system here in Brunswick?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and where do they work? What part of the court system?
I really don't know. He works for a law firm. And
Okay. And do you know, does this law firm do criminal work, civil work, or do you know what type of work they do?
I think it's probably civil.
Okay. Okay. I believe you said you know somebody or have family that's been in the military?
Yes.
Okay, tell me about that.
With my husband.
Okay, all right. And what branch was he in?
Well, he was in Vietnam.
Okay, all right. All right. You also said that you knew somebody who's been involved in the medical field or something like that, or works or has some training in the medical field, like nurse, doctor, or something like that.
He used to work at a hospital.
Okay. And what does she do there?
She's a CNA.
Okay. Now, you also, I know we'll get to it in a little bit. You don't use computers too much or anything, but you said you know somebody who works in IT or computer technology or something like that. Who is that, and what do they do?
She's a retired teacher. She's in homeschool on the computer.
Okay. All right. Now, you were also, on the questionnaire, you were asked a question about whether you served on a jury, and I ask y'all generally, have you ever served on a jury or a grand jury? You served on a jury before, correct? Now, was that a grand jury or a jury like this?
Like this, I've just been involved.
Okay. Was it, and with a grand jury, what you do is you come in and you hear cases and you present indictments. And you do a bunch of cases in a day and they come through. And then something like this, like a trial jury, you come in and you hear one case. Is that what you did? Okay. Was that here in Glenn County?
Yes.
Okay. Was it, you've just done it one time? All right. How long ago was that? About? You don't have to give me an exact date.
Oh, gosh, that's been almost 50 years ago.
And do you remember, was it a criminal case or a civil case? What was it about, if you remember? Was it about somebody committing a crime, or was it about somebody getting sued for a car wreck? Or if you remember, what do you remember about it?
I remember we couldn't come to a decision.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. And we've had several people that have had jury service throughout this process who've talked about it, and some they've had that same answer. And then the follow-up to that is it something where the case got worked out before y'all deliberated, or was it something that back in the jury room y'all got it and you just couldn't agree?
We was in that jury room and he couldn't get to.
Okay. And was this something where y'all were close to getting to agreement, or it was something where there were basically two sides fighting, or?
We discussed it and then we came to a conclusion and someone else said something else, but it was final decision.
Okay.
We were all in agreement.
Okay.
Majority.
Okay, but you had some people who weren't, so you didn't end up rendering a verdict. Okay. And you don't remember if it was like what it was about, correct? Or do you remember what the whole argument was? Not back in the jury room, but the case. Like, what were the witnesses testifying about?
No, my mind is not so good on remembering everything.
All right. Okay. Well, 15 years. I don't remember I'm trying to think back now. What was I doing 15 years ago? Kind of remember where I was living, but I mean, I understand. That's been a while. Okay. You go to church here? Okay. And what church do you go to?
The Bible Center Church of Jesus Christ.
All right. We had one jury yesterday describe it as he was an Easter and Christmas attendee, or are you a pretty regular attendee at the church? You go almost every Sunday? Every Sunday. All right. Thank you. All right. We ask a bunch of questions about technology and stuff like that, and you say you don't use computers yet. Okay. You did say you have a phone, like a cell phone, but it doesn't have like internet access or anything like that.
It has a network on it, but it's just one of those old ones like
Do you ever get on it or try to get on the internet on it or anything?
I don't.
Okay. All right, and you don't text message either, right?
I get it, but I don't.
You get it, and then you look at it, and you just whatever. We have a coworker who's like that. He'll get text messages. As soon as I text him, he calls me. He's like, "Hey, what do you want?" And I'm like, "All right." Yeah. So, people are laughing because they probably know who it is. But you don't use Facebook or Instagram or any of that stuff, do you? Do you even know? Have you ever looked at that stuff with somebody else using it, like on their Facebook page? I believe you stated that you've had the opportunity before to care for somebody who is either disabled or sick or something like that. Tell me a little about that.
My sister, she's younger than I am. Well, she was younger than I am.
Mm-hmm.
And she had to be put in the nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
She had a heart, like an 82-year-old lady.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, she died 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I cared when I came from work. I was in service.
Mm-hmm.
Before then, I used to go to the house and try to do what I can for her.
Right.
And she had to be put in the nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
That's when she died, in the nursing home.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that, ma'am. Because it takes a lot to actually do your own job and have to take care of a loved one who's sick and things like that, I'm sure.
My husband is deceased, so
Mhm.
and that was my only sister, so I'm married.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry to hear that. We'll shift gears a little bit from that. Do you have any hobbies, things you like to do in your free time? If you have any?
I like to cook.
Okay. All right. And what's your main thing that you cook? What are you noted for? It's already early. I'm starting to get hungry for lunch, but
I want to do cakes and
Okay.
good casseroles, whatever.
all right. All right. I asked you some questions about experiences with law enforcement. I think you said you had a good experience and a bad experience.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's just go ahead and start with the bad one and get that out of the way. Tell me about that. What bad experience do you remember having with law enforcement?
Well, my husband was arrested. He had a bike ride for me, and
Mm-hmm.
I had to get a lawyer to defend him.
Okay.
The lawyer did not do what he needed to do. And, so the man that I know that works in the law firm.
Mm-hmm.
He was judge, and they brought him over to his office, and that's where he was released. But the money, the other lawyer kept.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And my son, well, he moved out from home, and he lived with these boys, and they were all arrested at the home that they were living in because of drugs. And,
Yeah, you got a bunch of people in a house, and then everybody goes to jail because they found drugs.
and
Yeah.
he stayed there for a while because they didn't have money to get him out.
Right.
But the Lord blessed him because the boys finally came up and confronted that he knew no knowledge of what they were doing.
Right.
And so he was released.
Okay. And when you talked about you'd stated that you'd known somebody who's been falsely accused of something. Is that what you were talking about with your son, or is it something different?
That was his son.
Okay, all right. But in the end, it worked out good. He didn't go to trial or anything. His friends actually came to his aid later. Okay. And your husband, was that some type of the arrest? Was it just some type of like domestic thing?
That child
Oh, okay. I got you. All right. Now, you said you've had a good experience with law enforcement, too. Tell me about that.
Well, this is, you know how traffic tickets.
Yes, ma'am.
Some policemen don't have courtesy.
Yes, I understand.
It was my birthday. We sat home and get home and eat dinner. And my son tried to tell him that this was my mother's birthday.
Right.
It didn't make a difference to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I was on my way to church one night, and I got my ride, we could say,
And by sailing, you mean going pretty fast?
well, not, we were trying hard to get to church.
Okay.
So this policeman came out of nowhere,
Mhm.
and we pulled on the side of the road, and so he got out, and he said, "Ma'am, do you know you're in a 35-mile speeding limit, and
Mhm.
you went over 40?" And so he let us go. He gave us a courtesy warning, and he told me to pray for him in church.
Oh. Well, that was nice. Well, you know, that's a good thing to be prayed for out in the field. So, I think you said you've also known somebody who's been treated unfair by the court system or something like that. Was that when you talking about your son?
My son had open heart surgery.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that.
He's been waiting for quite a long time. They told him he could not work anymore.
Okay.
And he's been waiting for quite a long time for this baby. He's got the time in because they told him that he had, did well on his earning.
Right.
But it's like he's had a great hearing about 3 or 4 times.
So-
And I think it's unfair because
Mhm.
he's good health. He has
Mhm.
blood thinner and all kinds of medicine that he has to
Right.
use. And I have to help him a lot. And so it would be a blessing for him to release it. I
Yeah.
have to wait.
So it's kind of unfortunately caught up in the system. Yeah. No. I'm sorry to hear that too. Hopefully that'll work itself out sooner rather than later. You'd also said you know somebody who's been arrested for a crime. You're talking about what we've already talked about. Nothing else other than that, right?
No, I have a brother-in-law.
Okay.
Incarcerated. My sister's ex-husband. I don't know if he's still in jail or not.
Okay. And just generally, what was he charged with, if you remember?
They said he molested a child.
Okay. And do you even know enough about it to have an opinion as to whether he was treated fairly or anything like that?
To me, he was always good to my sister.
Yeah. Okay.
And when he divorced, it broke my heart.
Oh, yeah.
He had attended church and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of hard for me to. He was always so nice and.
Mhm.
Things happen.
Mm-hmm. You agree sometimes people give off an appearance of being like good on the outside on one side, and then you find out later they're completely different. Okay. All right. Now, have you been a witness in a case before? Had to testify? I think I had that you'd actually had to be a witness in a case before or come into court. Okay, I may, and that's why I'm asking the questions. I may have written it down wrong, or I may have seen somebody's hand up and I put you down or something like that. So, no, okay. All right. Have you ever had to file a police report or make a police report, like an accident or a break-in or anything like that?
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about that.
When I first moved to Brunswick, we had like French down the doors.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And someone broke into my house.
I'm sorry to hear that. Did they ever find who had done it, or did you ever get your stuff back?
Well, thankfully they didn't take anything. I didn't have anything.
Yes, ma'am. They were looking for something, and it wasn't. They got in there, and it wasn't what.
Now let the Lord just move them out of the way. That's all I can say.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. I believe you said that unfortunately you've known somebody who suffered the sudden death of a child.
Yes.
Okay. Tell me a little about that, if that's okay.
My niece,
Mhm.
her baby died from crib death.
Okay.
It left a bit of it. She's had other children since then.
Okay. And I think one of the last things I'm going to ask you here is that you stated, I think the defense had asked you, have you ever suffered any like unexpected trauma or anything like that? Do you remember that question where they asked you?
There was a time when my son was arrested.
Okay, all right. Now, when you get, do you follow the news at all? Like, okay, like newspaper. So you just try to stay away from it. So you don't watch TV news or. All right. All right. Have a second, Your Honor. All right, that's all the questions I have. Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning. You've got a lovely voice, but it is very soft, and so I couldn't catch quite everything. So I may ask you some of the same questions. Okay. One of the last things you were talking about was your son waiting for open heart surgery.
No, I said my son had open heart surgery.
Okay.
And they told him that he could not work anymore, and he's waiting on disability. And he's had several hearings, and he has the time already in, but they just have to wait on it.
Okay. So your son is so he's disabled, and the hearing to get his benefits have
They
just
told him
drug out.
He could not work anymore, and he had the surgery done in St. Vincent.
Okay. All right. From the information we got the other day, I understand you have your kids are all grown, but you have a granddaughter,
Yes.
15. All right. Does she live with you?
She spends the weekends, go to church. She's been doing that since she's a baby. So
Grandma takes her to church.
that's right.
Okay. And she's 15, and she still stays with you on the weekends. Okay. And is that your son or your daughter's child?
I have two sons. I don't have any daughters.
Two sons. Okay. And do they live here in this area as well? Okay. And are you just like helping out to give them a breather on the weekends, to give your son a breather on the weekends, or?
My son and his wife is divorced.
Okay.
The one with the open heart surgery is the child's daddy.
All right.
She likes being with me, and I like being around. It's not a burden to me. Like
Right.
my granddaughter.
Does he live with you too?
No, I don't.
Okay. And she's been coming to stay with you every weekend since she was a baby. All right.
Not every weekend, but
Almost. Okay. All right. So when she was when she was younger, when she was a baby, you would have been responsible then. Did you have to go pick her up and bring her to your house and take her back? And if you had to go anywhere, you had to transport her as well. All right. Did you have a vehicle at the time and have a car seat to drive her around in? Okay. Did you?
Those little carrying things that was set up.
Right.
Got her own set up for that.
The kind that had like a basket with a vase that stayed in the car, and then you just took it in and out. Okay. Did you have your own for your vehicle, or did you borrow the one that your son had?
I have my own vehicle.
You had the carrier.
Oh, I have my own carrier.
You had your own carrier. Okay. How did you decide what carrier to get? Did you go pick it out at the store?
Well, I thought it was the best one.
You thought it was the best one because you wanted.
I could afford it anyway.
Okay. Cost and safety. All right. So now that she's 15, she's old enough to get a learner's permit. You going to let her? You going to teach her how to drive? No.
I taught my sons.
And that was enough. Okay. They can teach her how to drive.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I want to follow up, make sure I understand what you were telling us about your husband was arrested for a child support issue. I'm assuming this was years ago. All right. But I didn't catch what it was exactly you were telling us. You said the lawyer didn't do what he was supposed to
He
do.
didn't know, Lord forgive me, but he was a lawyer, but I thought he didn't know nothing.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of those out there.
So I was working at the time with a lawyer, and I told him about the situation, and so he knew that one of his friends was a judge, and they didn't just let him out because of their position, but he talked to the judge, and the judge had my husband come from the jailhouse to his office, and they had a hearing in there. And some of it was lies. But anyhow, he was released. And that's the first time I seen him, with the things on his arm and something on his feet. And it just it kind of does something to you.
Sure. It hurts your heart to see it.
Yeah. But anyhow, like I said, they released him, and that was the only time.
All right. How long was he in jail?
About a week.
Just a week. All right. So you hired one lawyer. He didn't do what he said he was going to do. And then the lawyer who you were working for at the time, he was able to make a phone call to the judge and go ahead and get the hearing expedited.
He had the hearing in his office.
Okay.
And mother to the children, one of them was not really his child, but because he married her and prayed for her, he had his last name. And she didn't show up for the hearing, just the lawyer that represented her. And they told a lot of lies.
The lawyer told a lot of lies.
Well, she told him a lot of lies
Okay.
about the situation. But he had to pay the child support, and he paid it until he was 21 years old.
Right. All right. So, and you were at this hearing.
Yeah.
All right. But the woman didn't show up. Okay. But it's your understanding that some of the things that the lawyer was telling the judge were false. That the woman had told us some things that weren't true.
That's right.
Okay. And that stuck with you all these years.
I have no bitterness or anything, but I remember.
Yeah.
Some things I remember, some I don't.
Because that's the only time you had to go through anything like that. All right. And then you told us about your son being arrested. And was that the only time when he was arrested with a bunch of guys in the house? Yeah. How long ago was that? Well, was it more than 10 years ago?
It was way past 10 years.
Okay,
Before
all right.
His daughter was born.
All right.
He was just almost a teenager.
I'm just going to write down.
Decided to move out, so.
All right. And so what happened was he was living in a house with a bunch of guys. Apparently, there were some drugs, and everybody in the house got arrested.
That's right.
All right. How long did he have to stay in jail?
He stayed there about a month.
Okay.
He helped money getting up. And the boys finally told the truth and said he had no knowledge of what they were doing. And he was released.
Okay. Do you know by any chance, did he ever tell the police officer or anybody that, hey, I'm not guilty. This isn't mine?
I don't know.
Don't know. Okay. But regardless, he stayed in jail a month, and then finally they let him go. All right.
Because of those boys told the judge that he didn't have any knowledge of what they were doing. He was a chef on the jail.
Okay. And then I love the story you getting stopped on the way to church. Do you have a heavy foot often on the way to church? Does that happen sometimes?
Well, sometimes when you're talking, you don't realize just how fast you're going.
Yeah.
And the person that I pick up for church does not live next door to me. I have to go all the way across town and pick her up and take her to church.
All right. And I wrote down Revival Church of Jesus Christ. Did I get the whole name of the church?
Revival Center.
Revival.
Revival Center Church of Jesus Christ.
All right. And that's here in Brunswick.
341.
Okay. Okay. That's a minute. One question that we asked you about was whether or not you had ever observed or dealt with a person who appeared to be in shock as a result of a sudden trauma or tragic event. You remember answering yes to that question the other day? Whether you'd ever dealt with a person who appeared to be in shock as a result of a sudden trauma or tragic event?
My niece died in the hospital. And there's several things that, but she died in the hospital. Last year. It was kind of hard. It was a lot of family members coming in because they had said that she would not live. And my niece came in and she had said a lot of horrible things. And then my brother died in the hospital in February of this year. And they couldn't stop the bleeding. He had his rectal bleed. And the same thing happened again with the same daughter. And I don't know if you would say it was shock, but it it does something to you.
Yeah.
And you're just there to help, and they blame you for this and that, and it's not so. You're just trying to do what you know is best to help. And was kind of hard, but we made it through it.
The family's been through some very heavy life experiences lately, is what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay. We asked a question if there was going to be, if anyone thought they would be unable to serve as a juror if there was going to be graphic sexual language used, and I believe you raised your hand for that.
I did.
Do you think that you're going to be able to sit as?
I don't have to check at this time. I think this is an issue we've been taking up individually sequestered. I think it needs to be handled that way.
Do you mind doing that, Mr. Gilbert?
No, not at all, Judge. I don't mind. We can do that. Thank you, ma'am.
Juror 26, how are you? All right. I'm going to ask you to speak up a little bit so it'll help so the defense doesn't have to ask you the same questions that I ask you, okay?
Okay, I'll try.
That's good. I think we can all hear you. You don't have a microphone like me, but you're projecting well, so just don't try to...
I had laryngitis this morning, so to get it out, I don't, I'll try to.
Okay. Well, just don't blow out your neighbor's eardrums over there, okay? All right. So as far as your work history, you are retired from finance?
Yes.
Okay. And how long did you work in the field of finance?
Well, I worked for a finance company for 20 years. Prior to that, I did some bookkeeping for individuals.
Okay. And so your whole professional career, has it been doing that type of work? Okay. And your husband's retired. He was self-employed. He owned a convenience store? Okay. Was it like a chain convenience store or like a family-owned? I guess.
It was an independent. I did the books for the man that owned it.
Okay.
Like in the late 70s. And he wanted to sell it. And he had all sorts of people wanting to buy it. But for some reason, this man just attached himself to me. He was like 70-something, and he just liked me. And so he let my husband buy it. So we bought it. And he turned around and leased it to his brother because we didn't have the money to really
Run it.
financed it. But when it was paid for, he retired, and I was still working, but we leased it to somebody else, and after 7 years, they quit paying, so we took it back. And so after we took it back and I'd been retired, I had to go back and be the bookkeeper and do all the taxes and just about run the store with him.
Wow.
We finally sold it 2 years ago.
Oh, wow. What, was it here in Brunswick?
Yeah, it's just, it's not a chain, it's just an individual.
Okay. And did he ever do any, what other type of work did he do during his career before he retired? Was it mainly doing that?
That, and at one point he worked at one that had a bay area, and he did a lot of automotive repairs. He
Okay.
did that.
I gotcha. All right. Now, let's see. We asked several questions about prior experience, knowing people in they're trained or worked in different jobs, and whether you know certain people and things like that. One of the first questions I think we asked was whether you knew anybody who was a prosecutor or a criminal defense attorney. And I believe you stated that you know somebody who's a defense attorney?
I did, but it's not here. This was
Okay.
in South Carolina,
Okay.
where I grew up. I still know people there. There's nobody local.
Okay. And what part of South Carolina?
I grew up in Anderson.
Okay. And I believe you stated that you've had jobs before where you've supervised other people?
Yes, when I worked for the finance company, part of the time I was the manager, and I hired people.
Okay. Did you ever fire anybody? Did that have to go higher up that you wanted to
Go
fire?
higher up.
Okay.
I recommended it, but it had to go higher up.
Yeah. But sometimes you may have recommended it, but it doesn't happen, right? Okay. You've known somebody who's been in the military before, either a family member, friend, something like that?
My sister's husband was in the military, and he served in Vietnam.
Okay.
I was in high school, but I was really close with him.
Okay. Did he survive Vietnam? Okay.
I mean, they're still They've been married 53 years now, so
Wow.
he's like a brother to me after all those years.
I can imagine. So I take this was your older sister, correct?
Yeah, he's a,
And do they live around here?
they live in Greenville, South Carolina.
Okay. Now, you also have known somebody or known family or friends who've worked in the medical field, either nurse, doctor, or something like
I
that?
have a brother who's an oral surgeon.
Is that here in Brunswick or back in South
He
Carolina?
lives in South Carolina.
Okay. Okay. I believe you also stated that you've known somebody who has worked in Child Protective Services or DFACS or something like that. Okay, who would that be to you?
Just a real good friend of mine who goes to church with me and lives in my neighborhood.
Okay. And does he or she, they work for DFACS?
She did.
She did, okay.
She doesn't now, but she did.
And that's a perfect segue. Next question is church. You said you do attend a church here in town.
Yeah.
What church do you attend?
First Presbyterian.
Okay. You've been going there a long time?
39 years.
Okay. I'd say that's a pretty steady.
Well, I was
Steady.
Methodist, but my husband was Presbyterian, and we got married, and I just became a Presbyterian.
Okay. All right, kind of get into some of those questions about, we ask about technology and things like that. I think you actually use texting.
Yeah, a little bit.
A little bit? Okay.
I mean, I didn't, but all my grandchildren have convinced me that I need to.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's a certain line of demarcation or a certain age now these days where people don't talk on the phone anymore. It's just texting, right?
Right.
Okay. I'll tell you, I've kind of got, unfortunately, I guess, dealing with people all day, I've gone to the way of maybe texting, and so I'll look at a phone call and not answer it and then text back because I just don't feel like talking. It's sad.
But they like to text. So.
Yeah. I don't think it's a good thing, but it's kind of how society's taken us. It really is. It kind of has dehumanized us, I think, to a degree. So do you, as far as texting, do you use any other kind of messaging on phones, like messaging services?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. Now, as far as, I think we call it, like, we talk about social media, about Facebook and Instagram and things like that. Do you ever use that stuff?
The only thing I do is Facebook. I don't ever post on it, but I just sometimes look at it.
Okay. And when you look at it, what do you look at it for? Like to keep up with family, look at news, or something different?
Mostly to keep up with family because they put things on there.
See pictures of all the kids and stuff like that? You did, I think you told us that as far as TV and stuff like that, you do like to watch legal TV shows, some of them either fiction or nonfiction?
Yes.
Okay, tell me what you like to, it's kind of funny because we all sit here and hear from different jurors and we always get different types of shows. Yesterday we heard swamp murders. Have y'all ever heard of swamp murders? I see a couple heads nodding back there. We, Cobb County people, we didn't know what the heck that was. So well, do you watch swamp murders?
No.
Okay. All right. Tell me, what type of shows do you like to watch?
I watch Law and Order and all the Chicago series, Chicago Fire, Chicago PD, Chicago Med.
Right.
I was watching Criminal Minds, but it's gotten to be too deep.
Too hokey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watch sometimes the First 48,
Mm-hmm.
some of the other channels like that.
Well, I can tell you I don't watch many of those shows because you get home from work and it's kind of like, okay, I'm going to watch the Braves or the Falcons or football or something and not listen to that stuff. So, have you watched that type of stuff for a long time, or is it something new you just started? Okay. Do you ever watch any legal talk shows like Nancy Grace or anything like that?
I've watched Nancy Grace.
I think you said that you may have read a book or two about a murder case, either a fictional story or a true story. Okay, tell me about those. What types of books have you read?
Well, I read a lot of fiction.
Okay.
John Grisham and Steve Berry, and there's a lot of them are like legal and political, and some of them are murders. I've read a lot of Ian Rose true stories.
Okay. I think you stated that you've also, kind of in that same type of category, you've actually followed a real trial before, been interested in a trial that was actually going on, either gone to a courthouse and watched, or watched it on TV, or followed it in the news or something.
Yeah, I watched O.J.
Uh-huh.
And there was one in Florida that I watched a lot of, Casey
Anthony?
Anthony.
Yeah. All right. Now, you stated you've had a good experience with law enforcement before. Okay, tell me about that.
Well, about 6 years ago, my husband woke me up at midnight and said he had to go to the hospital, and I drove him and he had a kidney stone.
Oh, man.
And so we were there till 4:30, and then he was better. So we drove back home, and as soon as we walked in, I realized we'd been burglarized.
Oh, no.
Somebody had come in the side window, and so immediately we didn't touch anything, and he called the police. And so we went back outside to wait for him, and the policeman came. And I said, "Boy, that was quick." And he said, "No, I live in this neighborhood, and I heard the call. I don't have the call, but he said, I came over here." And he said, "I have a feeling I might know who did this, and I'm going to do some riding around." And he was really nice, and he stayed there until the detectives got there.
Okay.
But he just, they were just really nice when they handled the situation.
Were y'all able to ever find out who did it or get your stuff back?
No, they never found out anything. I didn't get anything back.
Okay. Sorry to hear about that.
It was really, things are replaceable, but I had stock certificates that weren't.
Oh, gosh.
And I had to pay a lot of money for a surety bond to get new ones, and
Right.
I didn't have coverage for that, so that was the worst part.
Is that when you talked about answering the question about whether you filed a police report? Was that what you were talking about, or something different?
Yeah, we filed a police report. That's the only one I can remember filing. Well, we filed one for my husband's business when somebody shot him. One day one night the alarm went off, and somebody just been shooting guns behind at the hotel, and one went through the window of the station, and one went through one of the gas pumps.
Oh, gosh.
We had to file a report then.
Did you ever find out who did that?
No.
Okay. All right. You stated that also. Have you testified before in a civil case or a criminal case or something?
I have. It's mostly for a couple of cases that was in magistrate court without a jury, just hearings for work.
Okay. Just some kind of work arguments between people, something about finances, or okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you stated that you're actually familiar, you think you're familiar with the Chick-fil-A at Paces Ferry 285 and Acres Mill Shopping Center. Tell me a little bit, how are you familiar with that?
Well, my youngest son he lives in Paulding County,
Yeah.
and he's lived there for 10 years, but prior to that, he went to school in Marietta, and after that, he's lived in Cobb County, I guess, for a total of about 10 years.
Okay.
So we'd go visit, and we'd go to the Cumberland Mall, and, all those places. And I've been going there for 20 years.
Okay. Okay. A couple of other questions you were asked. I think a couple of these were asked by the defense. You've actually transported children to daycare before in a car?
Yeah, I took my grandchildren, just not very rarely, because they don't live here. But
Right.
when I visited, may have had to.
Okay. And when you visit, did you take the car seat that would?
I used them. Normally, if we would go visit and he had to do it, they just took my car and left me theirs with the car seats.
Okay. And do you remember where they would put the car seat, like in the passenger side, in the middle, or behind them?
And it would be in the back. See, most of the time, right behind the drivers where they had it. Well, one son had 3 kids, so.
Oh, wow.
We had one on each side and a booster in the middle.
Wow. So everybody's in there.
Yeah.
And what type of car do they have? Like a minivan or something?
Yeah, minivan.
Okay. All right. Okay. So you didn't routinely drive them, but you would drive them places, take them to daycare on occasion.
Well, often we would go and stay with the ones, the one that has 3 he lived in Singapore, so we didn't really,
Oh, yeah.
but when they moved back to Texas, sometimes we would go and let them they'd go off. He likes to go on marathons, and they'd go
Oh, gosh.
from Chicago, and we'd stay with the kids, and we would have to drive. But by the time we had to drive all 3, one of them was already out of the car seat, but the other 2, one was in one and one was in a booster.
And you said you've heard commercials and stuff like that about looking again to make sure you don't leave a pet or a child in the car. Is that just where have you heard, like on the radio or TV, or do you remember specifically?
On both, I've heard them on the radio and TV.
Okay. And is that something recently, or you've heard it for years?
Well, I think it's more recent, especially a lot of it about pets.
Mm-hmm. All right. I don't have anything else. Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning. You had a son that went to school in Marietta?
Yes.
Did he go to Southern Tech?
Yes.
Okay. You know that
Not Southern Tech.
it's not Southern Tech anymore.
Now Kennesaw.
Exactly. My understanding is that the students in Kennesaw were thrilled about it, but the students at Southern Tech, not so much.
Yeah.
What period of time was he up there going to school?
He went to Southern Tech from 91 to 96. He was in a 5-year program. And then he continued to live in Marietta for about 3, and then they bought a house in Kennesaw, and he finally moved to Paulding County 10 years ago.
How long did he live in Kennesaw?
I guess about 4 years.
Okay. So was he on one of those 5-year work programs where he would like
He
work
was
at?
an architect. He's an architect, and it just took 5 years.
Okay.
For some reason, that's how long it took.
What is the name of the company that he works for now?
He works for Knife Architects.
When he was at Southern Tech and you would come stay in the 90s, where would y'all stay? Somewhere there close to campus?
Yeah, we usually stayed at I think it was a Hampton Inn right there off the interstate.
Do you remember if it was the Franklin Road area?
Yeah, I believe it was.
Okay. And that is just up the highway from where we're talking about, the Cumberland Mall area. Right, so you're familiar with Interstate 75, and of course it's changed since the 90s, but where you would get off to go to Cumberland Mall.
Right.
Okay. And then he moved to Kennesaw for 4 years. And would you continue to visit when he lived up there?
Yeah.
All right. Now, there's a mall up there called Town Center.
Yeah, we would go there a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you probably went to the Cumberland area a little bit less
Right.
because you go to Town Center.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now he lives in Paulding County,
Right.
and you still obviously go visit. Where do you stay when you do you stay with him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stay with him.
Do you still use that 75, 285 area? Do you still travel that area when you visit him?
Not too much anymore.
Okay.
All we do when we go is go to soccer games and lacrosse games.
Right. They're for the grandkids.
Yeah.
Okay. So during these times over the years, I mean, obviously you've been visiting that area for a long, long time. Would you drive or would your husband drive?
Before we would get to the Atlanta busy part, he drove.
Okay.
I didn't like to drive in it.
All right. So you mean once you got into the heavy traffic part, you made him drive? Yeah. Okay. Y'all ever get stuck in the backups on 75 or 285?
Every time.
Yeah.
I hate to go there.
You imagine having to get up and drive to work in that traffic every morning.
My son takes an hour and sometimes longer to get home.
Does he come down, if he lives in Paulding, does he have to come down Whitlock, Dallas Highway to get home?
He goes 75 and he works where 75 and 85 come.
Right. Oh, he works down at it all merges together?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. You probably don't go visit him at work then when you're, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the legal shows, and you apparently watch a lot of shows that are law-ish related, some fiction, some true crime, but you also listen to some of the, or watch some of the sort of talk shows. Now, the only one that's been mentioned is the Nancy Grace Show. Do you watch any other legal talk shows? Or talking head shows?
Every now and then I might just be flipping through the channels, but I can't remember exactly what we may have watched.
Okay. Well, what is it about that show that you like? Or why would you tune in to watch that?
I just find her interesting. I think she just says what she really thinks.
Do you find that you often agree with her?
Yes.
And sometimes she has guests on there that try to give different opinions. Do you ever agree with those different opinions if they're different from hers?
Sometimes, but I usually just listen to her.
Okay. All right. You indicated that you heard some public service announcements. Were those on television or radio?
I've heard them on both.
Both? Okay. And I think you answered that you had heard public service announcements both warning about not leaving or forgetting a child in a car, as well as those that warning not to leave or forget an animal in a car.
Right.
Okay. Is there a certain, do you hear those primarily during the summer?
Yes.
Okay. And have you heard them recently, or have you heard them for a number of years?
Probably, I would say in the last 10 years.
Okay. Have you ever been, because you've indicated that y'all are using the interstates, have you ever seen the signs that the DOT has up that says, remember to check your car for children?
Yes.
You've seen those?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe you'd indicated that you had heard accounts or stories of people who had left or forgotten children in their cars. And is that something you have just heard recently, or over a period of years?
I think there's been a lot more of it in the last 5 years or so.
Certainly a lot more that you hear about on TV, right? And you've never followed up any of those stories and looked anything up on the internet or done any research into why that's happening or why these stories are being published?
No, I've never followed up. I'm not sure why they publish them. I guess it's just everything nowadays is they publish it.
Yeah.
And it's, I think, to bring awareness to people.
I think you've touched on, or Mr. Boring has asked you about everything else that I wanted to ask you about this morning, so thank you.
It's easy since we're going numerical order. Good morning, 27. Would you like some? I don't mind. You got any extra cups over here? There we go. Court administration coming through. So you're not going to get a ton, but it's going to be very cold. So I'll just look at the ice. You're welcome. Okay, so juror 27. You kind of know the drill now by how we're going to do this. You are a draftsman. Okay, tell me a little about that.
I work for an architect.
Okay. All right. And as far as the architecture, is this buildings, things like that? Okay. And during your professional career, have you always worked in that field? Okay. All right. Your wife works as a nurse, correct? What type of nurse? It's like ER, general practitioner?
It's an RN and pediatrics.
Okay. And does she work in a hospital or? Okay. So does she spend time in the ER sometimes with doing pediatrics or have to deal with emergency injuries to children? Okay. So she deals more with the common day pediatrician type of issues?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
She's not allowed to talk about her work, so I did it.
Well, the HIPAA, got to protect the privacy of the client. Maybe she's just using it as an excuse not to have to talk to you. Right. All right. In asking you those questions, we asked you about whether you knew people and things like that. I believe you stated that you know a criminal defense attorney?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is that like a local attorney? And who's that? Okay. And how do you know him? Are y'all friends?
He's represented.
Okay. All right. Okay. And I'll go ahead and let y'all know, we have to run a criminal history on everybody. So, you know, we know everything that's out there. So it's just something, we've had these juror roles lately. They've changed our systems. And so a lot of times, unfortunately, people who aren't qualified actually make it to the jury list. But that's none of y'all, so don't worry, we're not going to be getting into that. So I'll just ask you a couple questions on that topic. On these issues you've had, have they been in Glenn County? Okay. Do you believe you've been treated fairly on all of these occasions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. All right, and thanks for volunteering that. I didn't know we were going to go there, but we ended up there, so. All right. You said you know some people in the court system as well. Or the courthouse or something like that?
My first cousin was a clerk of court in the next county, Grant County,
Okay.
for 16.
And you also know some folks who've worked in law enforcement?
Oh, yes. My niece's husband is something.
Okay. Something. He does something with law enforcement?
Yeah, he's the police.
Okay. And is that around here or somewhere else? In Glenn County. Okay. Is it Glenn County PD or Glenn County Sheriff's Office? You don't know? Okay. All right. You also know have had some people you've known or family that have been in the military?
My dad was in the Navy and my brother-in-law was in the Army.
Okay. Okay. And as far as knowing somebody that works in the medical field, obviously your wife. Anybody else? Or is that what you were thinking of when you raised your hand? I believe you stated that you use your cell phone to text, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How often do you text regularly?
Yes.
Now, sometimes you have different types of applications on cell phones that you can message almost like a text. Do you use those two, like Facebook Messenger, or I think some other ones are called like WhatsApp, or?
I've used Messenger, but mainly just text.
And as far as social media, like Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and all that stuff, do you use any of those things?
I use Facebook and YouTube.
Okay. And you know my follow-ups from talking to them, Facebook, what do you use that for?
Go to sleep. My wife is doing.
So, okay, spying on your wife, and then finding out, put you to sleep. I guess you get bored looking at some of the inane stuff in people's lives that they put online, right? I gotcha. All right. And YouTube, what do you use YouTube for?
Entertainment.
Okay. Like music and videos, stuff like that.
Instructions.
Like learning how to do something, right? Okay. As far as news, I know you seem to use the internet some. So, are you when you get your news, where do you get your news from? Like national TV, local TV, radio, internet?
MSNBC is my homepage, and I scan headlines daily.
Okay, just like when your home screen comes up and it'll be like, Tom Brady suspended. Next thing there's war. Next thing like that. Okay.
And NPR is the radio.
Gotcha. Now, I believe you stated that you read fiction books about murder or homicide cases or something like that. Tell me about that.
I love to read, and that's generally the genre that I look for is murder mystery.
Okay. All right. Any particular author that you're a big fan of?
There's a bunch out in Grisham. Patricia.
All right.
Stephen
King. You also, I believe you stated that you've had a bad experience with law enforcement before.
Well, that was part of the
Kind of what we've already talked about.
Yeah, I mean, it was just felt that the officer was a little. Well, it was my fault,
But no, you can go ahead. You can say it.
Listen to anything, just wouldn't listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
The handcuffs were a little tight.
I got you.
Yeah, I probably said something.
All right. Okay. And when you said you've known somebody's been arrested for a crime, that's what you're talking about? The stuff that you've dealt with? Okay. Anything else, knowing somebody's been arrested for something? Okay. Okay. I believe you said you've had to file a police report before, or have to give a statement to the police about something. Do you ever have, and I may have written that down wrong, but... Okay. All right. Now you said that you've actually had a child that's fallen asleep in a car, or you've known children to fall asleep in a car. Tell me about that.
My first marriage, there was she had a child, small child, and yeah, get it to pick her up from school. She'd be out before we got home.
Okay.
10 minutes old.
Okay. And this was you said you would transport to daycare and things like that. And how old was the child back then, if you remember?
4.
Okay.
4 or 5.
This been after she'd been at daycare all day? She or he? Sorry.
Well, I would take her to school and pick her up.
Gotcha. Okay. And so you answered that other question. You've been through a divorce before. So, okay. And if you have free time, like what do you like to do in your free time? What are your hobbies?
I read a lot. Draw, sketch.
Okay.
Take pictures.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Hey, good morning. think I've got a whole lot to follow up with you, so may be able to get through this kind of quickly. I do want to ask you a little bit more about something that you saw fit to call to our attention as far as having a bad experience with, say yours? Yeah. Bad experience with a police officer. And I think what you said was that maybe you said some things that you shouldn't have said, and that he wouldn't listen to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you think that he treated you? Maybe he treated you a little differently because you said something. He didn't like what you said.
That's it. Probably.
Is that fair to say? Okay. We're just talking about something you said. You didn't do anything, attack anybody or anything like that.
No.
Okay. All right. And you said the handcuffs were a little tight.
It was like a tie strap deal.
Mm-hmm.
And they really kept the wrist. I'd asked him, pleaded with him, please loosen it up, change it or something.
Okay. All right. So you were trying to explain to him that it was too tight, and he didn't want to hear it. Okay. And that's the bad experience that you wanted to let us know about. Bad experience with a police officer.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was all. Looking back.
You'd have done some things differently. Yeah.
Stayed on.
All right. All right. And you said you read a lot, and you like to read a lot about courtrooms and you said murder mysteries. What's do you know what the last book you read was?
Stephen King.
End of Watch?
No, the title was a date.
Oh, 11/23/60.
3,
Yeah,
I think.
that was pretty great, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think there's a Hulu's done a series, like a series of that book. I think it's Hulu. You read Michael Connolly? The Mickey Holler series? No? All right. All right, so you told us that you had heard accounts or stories of child left or forgotten in a car other than this case. Do you remember what you heard?
Well, I'm not sure the answer to that one, but it seems like there was a case where the lady, she might have even been in that car there in Daytona Beach, where the car into the ocean with the kids still in the car seat.
Okay. Well, that's why we're following up. If you think you have information about the topic that we're asking about, then we'll follow up. And if it's what we're talking about, fine. Okay. Let's see. Cover that. I think you answered the question that you had a family member, close friend that had an affair. Who was that? Or is that somebody you can tell us about?
Well, yeah, it's my sister-in-law.
sister-in-law?
Yeah.
She was married to your brother?
She's married to my first wife.
Okay.
No, not again. She was my first wife's sister.
First wife's sister. Okay. You know, I think I'll stop it there then. Thank you.
Let's take a morning recess.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, keep an open mind, we've got to discuss this matter with each other. Let's take 2 minutes for you all to have a morning recess. Have a good break.
All right, please.